Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Sterling, and I'm the president of Western Information Management, Inc., or Western IM for short, in Saskatchewan, Canada. I would like to thank you all for attending the webinar today about the physical side of our Whisper inventory tool. To start things off, just a quick story about how Whisper began. It was developed essentially out of self-defense, since at the time we were doing a 100,000 box inventory project for a client that spanned 110 different locations across a huge geographic area. It is unlikely that many of you have that size of physical inventory to deal with, and for that you should be truly grateful. Suffice to say that in the end of a long and grueling but successful project, that the code we wrote did the job, since the project came in on time and under budget. We then did an immediate follow-on physical inventory project of a different kind for a client that had a full warehouse of information that needed to be inventoried/validated, and we enhanced the code again accordingly. At the end of all that, we just decided we should do something with the application, since very few suppliers were still working with physical information anymore, and there were really very few tools, if any, that existed in the marketplace. So at that moment, the Whisper tool was born. Although it started out as a physical inventory product, it has turned into a really versatile tool for content inventory in both physical and electronic form, and spans most of those content types that we all wrestle with on a regular everyday basis. Now, for the technical people in the crowd, maybe on the webinar, it was developed, the application was developed in .NET and uses RESTful services, so it's quite a modern architecture internally. It does have an API, and it's usually implemented in a software as a service, SaaS kind of format, although it can be on-prem if it's required that way with the client. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the electronic side of the Whisper tool. So just a reminder to everybody that the webinar today, that we will try to keep this about physical information. And there are follow-on webinars that speak to electronic capabilities in Whisper and how it can help you with many different kind of types of projects in your organizations. Make sure you sign up for the ones that you're most interested in, such as how Whisper would assist if your shared drive cleanup project is the one you're doing now. How Whisper works with SharePoint, if that's appropriate for you. How Whisper can allow you to get more value from your enterprise tier 1 applications like Perceptive or Documentum. We will further try to use these webinars to highlight how Whisper would assist in actual projects. I always think it's better to see something, how it would actually work and what the project might look like if I was going to do it. And that'll be the focal point of our webinar today, is doing a physical inventory/validation project. So why a physical inventory project now? Like, why now? And the answer is, in my mind, is fairly straightforward. So management is always telling me, when I stop and talk to them, they're looking for space. And we could probably help them get some of that when we figure out how to get rid of some of the physical information that's taking up that space now. And most of the professionals I talk to indicate that less and less paper is coming in from business units, and more processes are being converted to electronic form. Or to use the kind of current buzzword of the day, digital transformation is taking place. It's a perfect time, really, to consolidate all of that legacy metadata we have, and we've all got lots of it, probably in several different spreadsheet formats, homegrown databases, all kinds of other sources, into some kind of standard source of truth, which will allow us to validate the holdings that we think we have and inventory what we don't. Oh, and that means at the end of the project, we can probably get a sign-off for disposition of a whole lot of stuff that probably reduce operating costs accordingly, freeing up space, and a whole lot of other positive reasons for doing this kind of project. And for those of you that have to deal with the increasing numbers and complexity of freedom of information requests, a clean start and a source of truth we can trust would give a distinct advantage, I'm sure, to any organization in that regard. So what does a project actually look like? and I apologize to you for the size of the lines on the screen. I wanted to keep it all on one slide, the entire project. So first step of any project like this is usually try and write a project charter and get it approved through management. Of course, we need to do that. Once that's done, we're going to decide on communications plan to any of the business units involved. So that would be important just to make sure that we have a classification system and retention schedule as well in hand, whether it's current or completely current or not. And I find that sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. Some are fairly outdated at this point. You probably want to plan out what extra things your team or teams are going to look for during the project, since there's no reason to leave any loose change on the counter. So we're going to be looking at things in boxes anyway, so we should have a plan in mind for new things we might want to flag, like personally identifiable information, PII, if we find it. Things that you maybe should be on legal hold, things that might be vital records, any problem boxes that need more analysis. Maybe there's a new security classification system in your organization that we should flag appropriate physical things during the project. Or maybe some of what we find should be scanned because we don't want to scan at all. We maybe find some things we think need to be scanned because they're high access kind of information. And then we'd have a backup in electronic form and an electronic OCR convenience copy for appropriate users to find. Maybe we even want to add barcodes or QR codes to our boxes on the way through to make our lives easier in the future, if we don't have them already. So one of the most important things about a project such as this is acquiring software tools that will really assist along the way. And that's my only sales plug for the day on the Whisper tool. Find some tools to help in this regard. So thinking about physical information from experience, I would say that most of you have some in offsite storage, such as Iron Mountain access, or your own record centers in some cases. Maybe you have your own mini record centers, for lack of a better term, in areas like basements, closets, other locations for both active and inactive records. So it can be really all over the place. You will have, you may even still have a corporate library of important publications that you want to control as well. Information in our control can readily be validated or inventoried, but we don't have the same kind of access to the information in offsite storage. So, well, a couple of things we could do there. We could get the offsite storage provider to give us a work area in their facility so they can pull the boxes from their locations and put them in a work location that we can have our team working inside theirs. Or we can have a team have the inventory pulled out of the record center and brought out to a working area inside your organization so your team can deal with it there. So one of two. This might sound expensive because we know it costs money to pull boxes, but all physical information that we validate or inventory may ultimately be signed off and shredded, and thus saves us a lot of storage costs over the long term. Some of you are wondering why we would want to validate offsite storage. But I've seen so many times where a corporation will simply have a business unit box up their information, put some kind of label on, and send it off to the record center with no concern at all as to what actually went in the box, particularly if it was related to retirement or something similar. So once we determine that we want to do with what we have, we can form our team. Now, if we haven't already done that, form the team. Let's not forget, we likely need to do some communication with the business units. That's a very important part of the procedure because we'll be working in there and we want them to know we're going to be working in there, and they have the subject matter experts that we can ask help from when we aren't certain about information in question in some of their information, physical information. The teams will also need a Wi-Fi hotspot so they can operate remotely in locations where reception is not necessarily perfect. So equipment to do the project is very important, making sure that all works and is teed up, ready to go. So I know, but not last but not least, run some tests on timing after the team is trained and do up a draft schedule. So once everybody gets kind of to know the ropes, we want to know how long we think this might take us. And I know that's pretty hard to do, but it'll also give us a baseline for later to know how we're doing as we go forward in the project. So planning, planning, planning are the keywords in this type of project. And now we're just going to go straight into the Whisper application. Just wanted to introduce Troy Sawyer, my partner and the lead developer at Western IM. And Troy actually wrote Whisper, and he'll be doing this webinar with me. So just to be clear to all of you, Troy is the technical one of the two of us doing the webinar today. Troy?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, as Rick mentioned here, I'll actually take over the screen and we'll bring up Whisper to be able to demonstrate some of the items that Rick has been talking about as he talked through a couple more parts of our demonstration today. So I'll take control here and share my screen.
Thanks, Troy. And don't forget, everybody, you can ask questions in the Zoom chat application along the way. We'll try to get to any questions at the end of the webinar today. If we can't get to all of them, we will reach out and get back to you answers after the fact. So we'll answer in some way, shape, or form all the questions that you have. So I've been in the IT business for a long time myself, and the thing that probably bothered me the most personally over the years is having to flip from screen to screen to screen to get something in a software application. You know, when you actually have to write things down between screen flips in order to complete a task. And Whisper was designed to keep everything together on one screen so that all of you information management professionals can quickly get the job done. So after a long time in records and information management, I know that all of you know exactly what you want to do, and Whisper will really aid in that chore. So Troy, how does that look in Whisper? Maybe you could give us a quick tour of the application, get us started.
Yeah, for sure. So just what we're looking at right from the get-go here is the kind of main screen. We have three kind of major parts. This left-hand side is where we kind of see a flat list of our content. Currently, I'm looking at boxes since today's demo is going to be around physical inventory, but we can quickly just switch over here. This is just our demo repository that has a number of different types of objects in it. We'll focus on the boxes today. Right-hand side, we have basic content, or container and content. This is the information associated with the box in the top right. Things like department and function activity helps us functionally organize our content or in our containers. Within our containers, we have our volumes or folders. And if we actually select one here, we can kind of see not just a list of it, but this particular piece of information, this volume. It's classification, to and from dates. Now, the thing that we like here, especially with the validation parts or accessing information, is that we kind of kept everything on the same screen here. I'm looking at a subset of containers, my boxes in particular here. I see the box information, but often when we go in to look at content, the box information is lost. That's kind of what Rick was alluding to here, where we have everything on one screen. The container that this volume lives in is very important to the actual entirety of the information. So I can see a container number, maybe it had a row bay bin, but that is very important to the content that we're looking at. So again, we didn't have to jump to a different screen. We're seeing all the information associated with the content that we're searching against, as well as a particular piece of information on the right-hand side.
That's great, Troy. Thank you. Can we see, you know, if you got a box there, we can look at a particular box that's got some content in it, Troy. So that's the box, and then the content shows up in the lower pane on the right-hand side. I see.
Yeah, this one didn't have any. Yep. So here, this is my ADM box that I made yesterday. That had ADM.
That's the one with the rubber boots in it, Troy.
This one has folders apparently. No boots.
Okay. Okay. So you have all kinds of different information about current inventory in your organizations, and you may have been there for, you know, yourselves for 10 or 15 years personally, but maybe the records management program's been in place for much longer than that. So all this could mean multiple types of spreadsheet formats loaded with information, as well as, you know, the homegrown databases and infamous summer student input situations that may have occurred along the way. So Whisper allows for ingestion of a standard spreadsheet format that will actually validate many of the fields and assist with correction of erroneous information. So move the spreadsheet. So that's the first job. Move the spreadsheets into the standard format, or we can assist with professional services to get all that disparate sources of information into Whisper in a very consistent way at the start of the project. And once we loaded all that existing information you have about your physical holdings, we can go on with the project, knowing that the information we have in Whisper then is aligned into a consistent format. So how do you validate it all? Why would I want to validate inventory information that I already have? And the best answer is usually no legal department wants us to dispose of a box full of information without actual validation of the contents and its classification. The end goal is always to get a sign-off for disposition of physical content and not leave it either in a valuable corporate storage location or costly offsite storage area. It's always easier to get legal sign-off if we've actually validated our inventory and vetted the process. So we're going to use for the project with legal, archives, or senior management prior to starting. So Troy, can you show us a bit about the ingestion of spreadsheets, how we get all the information we have now into Whisper?
Sure. I'll actually open a spreadsheet here just to kind of show one that I like to demonstrate against here, this one here. So often we have spreadsheets or other databases. This is just one we're going to use to ingest here today. And this kind of is typical where we have information associated with the box and the content within it. So we're actually going to take this one and bring it into our Whisper application. Just a note here across the bottom, we've actually got two different boxes. This one's 06 and 10. And we're actually going to scan both of those in as this import. So we're going to hop into Whisper under our administration menu. We have an import. Now this import is specifically for spreadsheet ingestion, but we have other mechanisms for data mapping from things like other databases. So let's take a look at this. Now the key here is that we've got quite a bit of information that existed in that spreadsheet. We want to get it in, but when we initially set up our Whisper repository, for lack of a better word here, is that we've got predefined departments and functions and locations within our organization that we want this data to kind of adhere to when we bring it in. So let's not just bring it in without any kind of validation. So let me load up the spreadsheet and start scanning this in. And what's actually going to happen here is that it found two boxes here, and I'm going to start importing. Now within that spreadsheet, it actually found a location that it's trying to import for my box, that first box in the spreadsheet. But it found a location called demo company. But within our our Whisper application, we don't have a demo company. So it's asking me, which one did you actually say WIM? We're going to map this to WIM. So now we're making corrections to that spreadsheet as well as it comes in. Found a department called demo company as well. So let's actually, we've got some departments within our organization. Let's actually make this, this is ECO, so let's make this executive council. I'm gonna make a correction here. And here it's going through, we've only got two boxes here, so the progress is just gonna jump for each box. Right now it's actually returning through all of the content, all the volumes that are within that box. Give it a sec here, it should finish up. And this is our ECO 0006. Now we're on to the next tab, that 0010. Again, we found a location that didn't match. So we're going to correct that box and we're going to let it finish up the import here. Just to jump back to the spreadsheet quickly here, there's a bunch of information on here like classifications and to and from dates. And we're going to demonstrate kind of what this looks like now that we've got this into Whisper. So our first box is ECO 18006. So let's actually take a look. You can see my left-hand side, I'm still filtered by boxes. This was a box that was imported, and here we can see this is the one that just created. It wasn't here before. And we can see all the content that was associated along with its classification and to and from dates that all got brought into here.
Great.
And here's our EC 10 box as well. Looks like a bunch of finance documents came in the second box.
That's great, Troy. That's so this is kind of the second step. This is getting all your information that you've got now in all kinds of different formats into Whisper and putting it into a standard format so we can see it all inside the tool. So generally start with, and now we got to enter classification retention information as well, Troy, into the system, obviously. And it can take a couple of hours to, in terms of Whisper, it can take a couple of hours to several days, depending on the complexity and size of the classification system. There is an editor in Whisper though, Troy, so you can enter it yourself. With that done, now we can start to build our source of truth about the physical holdings in the entire organization once we've got all that done. So Troy, maybe you could show us the what it looks like in the editor.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump into my admin menu again. This is a place where this is kind of a relatively new feature to be able to edit your classifications in Whisper. But essentially here you can see we've got the Finance 02 kind of typical classification codes that we see in an organization. And behind the scenes in our classification editor, we can actually see all of our classifications here. If I scroll down, and we'll start loading some more. But say I want to look at a couple in particular. Let's look at the CC ones here. So I'm going to filter down to CC dash here. You can see all our CC ones. Oh, we didn't filter. CC. Oh, filtering didn't filter. But here we can see the information associated with things like how long we retain content that has that classification, whether it's event driven, calendar year, fiscal year. Those dates will then get calculated based on the period or event that happened. Across the bottom here, I've actually got a to and from date. Oh, looks like my filtering didn't work. Okay, there we go. Oops. So here I've got some sample dates across the bottom where I have my sample to date, my sample event date. On my right-hand side, it looks like this one's event driven. So anything I put CC01 on, it's gonna, based on my date of today, would have calculated event plus 7 years. And this is just a sample calculation date. As we apply these to content within our repository, we then get what we call projected dates. And those projected dates are essentially the last disposition action or retention action, whether it's archive or dispose, or if it's permanent, we won't get classification dates. I'll actually just jump over to my content tab just to show what some of these dates look like a little bit clearer. So here we can see here's a bunch of the folders that we scanned in. I'm just going to go to volumes. We scanned in a bunch of the volumes for that EC box that we scanned in, and we see the finance ones. We found event dates on all of those finance folders. We've calculated projected dates for all that content that came in. So it looks like in April 1st of this year, one of those pieces, one of the folders within that box that we scanned in from our spreadsheet would have met its projected date.
That's great, Troy. That's great. So, so now we've got in our metadata that we had from all our different sources. We've got our classification, retention information into the system. Now we're actually going to start to validate boxes and folders that live in those boxes, and maybe pick up and inventory anything we don't already have. So we're just moving right along in the inventory validation project. And I input a box number, Troy, and the Whisper says I don't have that yet. So what does that look like? Let's say I put in a box number that doesn't exist in our metadata that we put in originally.
Yep, sure. Okay, let's hop back over to the container tab to kind of look at what we've got here. So I've got my EC 018 or 1810 box here. I'm just going to quickly put in the 06 one. We scan this one in. And what's going to happen here is this actual input of our container information, our box codes are unique. So when I go, bring
sorry, we're losing you, Troy. Troy, are you there? I can't hear you. Just hang in, everybody. We'll wait till Troy comes back. I know there's been some internet issues around the office in the last day or so. So what Troy was going to show let me look at my chat screen here. So we can't hear Troy right now. He's hopefully coming back.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay, good, Troy.
Sorry about that. Looks like we had a hiccup here. Okay. So
That only happens in demos, Troy.
of course. Okay. Just because I lost connection here, I'm just going to restart real quick.
That's great, Troy. You're coming back here.
Yep, looks like it. Just trying to connect here. Maybe. Computers don't like you when you disconnect in the middle of something. Okay,
There we go. So
okay.
you were going to show us, Troy.
Correct. Yeah. So we were talking about boxes out. We already exist. I'm not quite sure where I got cut off there, but let's say, for example, we're talking about creating some new stuff. But if I put in a box number for one that already exists, we can see we actually already had this one. This container field contains a unique box number. So when I put that in, it usually means I'm looking for that box. So I put in 06 and it actually found 06. But if I come up to another box and say we got 10, so let's go to 11. If I put 11 in here, it knows it didn't find this box within my system. So I'm right in creating a new container in the system. Again, trying to keep everything on the same screen. If I'm trying to create new content, I already have all the forms and stuff here. Why do I need to go to another tab or another form to be able to continue entering that information? So whether I'm validating or if I find something that I can't validate because it doesn't exist in our previous information, we can start creating right here right away. So I'm going to quickly put in, say I'm in row bay bin, row bay shelf here of 111, and we're going to create a test box. We're going to hit here. What actually changed was this actually changed from an update to a new button. So we're just creating a new box here. So we just created a new box.
And so, Troy, it looks like we can also check a box there. If we find the box that we're validating has an issue with it in some way, shape, or form, i.e., the box is destroyed, it's got damage to it in some way, there was some issue with one of the folders inside the box, that kind of thing, we can flag it so that somebody, the project manager that's looking after this project, can actually go and pull up anything that's got issues the next day.
Yeah, correct. So this one, our out of the box has issues flag on it. This could be a PII flag or legal hold flag, but in this particular configuration, we've got it set up as a validation project where we have teams out using Whisper to do validation. So I'm going to flag this box as having an issue, and we're going to say we found those boots we were talking about earlier. So please review. So we're going to send this back up as a review thing. And essentially here, I'm going to update this. This box has now been flagged for review, and we actually have a specific tab for investigate. So anything that I've flagged in our system that needs investigation is in a custom tab here, configurable tab, that allows us to see just those boxes we've flagged as having an issue.
That's super. So what if, Troy, what if we got a box, one of the team members brings a box and puts it down in front of us? Is there fast ways to actually get that box information into the system?
Yeah, so we have a capture kind of tab here, and essentially what this allows us to do, it'll actually pull up a camera here. We have this installed on a couple of Windows tablets, and essentially we can walk up to a box label and take a picture of it. So this is actually on my desk here. I'm just going to focus this a little bit better. We can actually take a picture of this box. So on a tablet here, I would actually just tap the picture, and it goes out here, and it'll actually find the CO0001 box, and it actually populated it in here and brought up all the content that was associated with this box that I'm standing in front of.
Oh, that's great. And if some of the information needs to change, Troy?
Yeah, so if we can grab a couple of other, what I call tabs off of the box label. So there's a couple other pieces of information here. I notice here it says test box, but again, imagine being on a tablet here. I'd actually tap on my descriptions thing here. And I'd say, you know what, this is actually government records. Let's actually click or tap on government records. And we can see we actually updated the field that we had selected. And we can use this for things like row bay bin here. So this actually says 1513. We can actually select a row here. And it's smart enough to know this is actually considered all 3 fields. So it'll actually populate the whole location for me. So again, taking away some of that data entry stuff for stuff that we can scan from, you know, people working out in a warehouse, for example, that might just want to have a tablet, not a full keyboard.
Oh, that's great. That'll save a lot of time and effort in a large project for sure. So we can take a picture. We can get some of that information in. The thing that really bothers us most is how do we find things in the system as we build it, right? So we're actually doing all kinds of things where everybody's working fast, trying to get things done. Whisper has a powerful filter and search system in it, so we can get done what we need to do fairly quickly. So Troy, can you just bring up a box we looked at earlier so we can see some of the content and how that filter system might work?
Yeah, so we've been working a lot here with these ECO boxes, but I'm going to hop over. We're going to look at some of the ADM boxes. So I'm going to keep my filter like I did it right at the beginning here. We're going to keep looking at our box types here, and we're just going to go say we want to find ADM boxes. You can see we further refined what we're looking at based off of a couple of predefined filters across the top. These we can change per implementation. Obviously, people have different metadata fields that are important to them. But just to demonstrate kind of the pre-text filter, we've actually highlighted a couple of ADM pieces of information it found here. And this also applies to the content within. So this ECO box actually has an administration of justice in the contents of it. So we actually brought that box up because we're searching the content as well.
That's great.
This applies to things like locations. So if I hop back, let's clear this. And let's say we only wanted to see all my stuff in my, let's say record center. Yeah, so this kind of gives us that refined search to see just items that exist in our record center.
And after working with records professionals for a whole lot of years, I know it's pretty important to be able to get things done fairly quickly and find things fairly quickly inside a system. So this will really assist with that kind of job during the course of the project. What if we have to make changes, Troy, to a bunch of things along the way at the same time? Is there a way to make kind of global changes to things if we need to while we're doing the project?
Yeah, we have a couple of bulk update features, and this will exist for around metadata that's on containers or classifications. So I've actually deliberately set this up here. We can actually see that our ADM boxes were actually created in this councils department. We actually meant that these were ADM boxes in the administrations department for how we've organized this information. So I'm actually going to take these 3 ADM boxes. So let's update this to actually the ADM department. So I'm going to click here. It's just select a number of boxes, and we're going to go to the bulk update. This will update metadata. We can take a look at classification next year. So let's just do a bulk update. And this also kind of applies to transfers as well. A lot of time when we're doing transfers, we're just updating metadata on our boxes. Say that I'm looking at items that are in the record center, maybe they've moved to Iron Mountain, and as part of this, we can specify the location as well. So let's actually do this. So we're going to specify a new transfer. We're going to give this a transfer number. Transfer numbers are essentially just saved sets, so that when you come back later, we can apply that transfer number to a number of boxes that maybe we're putting on a pallet to ship off. So let's update here to today as my transfer number. And we're going to say, we're going to transfer these boxes, not just to the right department, but we're also going to transfer them to Saskatoon. We're going to say we're moving them to Saskatoon. So this was the actual error on our boxes. The department I noticed was wrong. So we're going to update the administration. We're not going to change function or activity. We're going to keep those the same. We're just going to update those 3. So you can see they actually disappeared off my list because I've actually changed the location. So let's jump over to Saskatoon here. And now we can see our 3 boxes that we've moved from Record Center to Saskatoon and corrected the department to ADM is now under the box information now.
And we can actually change the classification as well, Troy, because that happens sometimes, right? You get a classification in there and you go, hey, wait, we got to change this.
Yep. So let's actually, I'm just going to hop over to one of those ones we brought in earlier. That the reason is these boxes all have consistent classification. Let's jump to a box that has a bunch of different classifications in it and update all of those. I hope I'm not losing connection again. Yep, okay. So let's look at, say, that 10 box. Well, we found our 10 box here. So we can see, oh, that's the finance, all finance. Let's do 06 because that one had all separate different ones here. So here we can see some legal, some CCO2, some government. And we just realized that whoever did this was totally out in left field. All of this should actually be, say, let's pick one that's got projected dates. So let's go CC02. So everything in this box should be CC02. We'll just bulk update on one box, but we're actually updating all the content within it. So let's bulk classify. I've left this screen here just to demonstrate a lot of classifications we're looking at right now is the one level. We do have configurations where we have primary and secondary capabilities as well. So I'm just going to change the classification on this one to CC02. We could update the from and to dates, but we've brought this in from the spreadsheet and we feel that's correct information. So we're not actually going to change to and from dates or event dates. We're just going to update everything's classification. Update. I'm still running a bit slow here, sorry. But all the content within here now has been updated to O2.
That's just so that makes it really fast to get those kinds of things done when you're in the middle of a project, when you need to change from one thing to another. That's really good. How about reporting, Troy? So reports are always kind of that tricky piece of any system, so that nobody's report ever looked exactly the way that anybody else wanted to see it. So I could give somebody 16 different reports and none of them would be exactly the way they wanted to see them. So does Whisper have that ability to allow you to design a look and feel so you could, you know, use on a regular basis with your own, in your own organization, put a logo on it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's a couple of quick ways that we like to do reporting. I'll kind of run through each one just quickly here. The way I like to explain it is just like I explained at the beginning of the webinar, is that we have kind of three major areas in this main screen here. So we can report on those. So I've got my left-hand side here. I'm looking at boxes, and let's actually just go down to the ones that we shipped off to Saskatoon. Maybe I've got to pass this information along to somebody that's outside the Whisper system, for example. So what I see on my left-hand side is actually called the report, generate report. And we're gonna, in this one, we'll just do a raw dump. Later on, I'll show you one with some formatting. So I'm just gonna say, I've filtered down to this piece of information and I want to just get this information. So here we can see everything that we saw on my screen is now put out into an Excel spreadsheet. And from here, we can do things like put this into another report, add some sorting. The sorting could have come from Whisper as well. But this is just kind of the raw information. Actual reporting to let's get this into something a little bit more fancy. I'm actually going to hop over to the right hand side of the screen. So this is the kind of second reporting. So we're going to actually take this box that we had here, the 06 box, and we're going to generate container. And you can think of the container report as the right hand side of the screen, including all the content that's within it. So we're actually going to get all the metadata associated with that box as well as the content in it. And I'm actually going to put one here into a Western IM template that I have here, and we can see how this looks. So here you can see that we've got all that information, the content types, the classification to and from dates, all put into something pre-formatted here. And these templates are just Excel templates that you can actually modify even as a user if you understand what's happening here. But we just added a bunch of tags in here that said, where I see department, put the department next to it. Here I added a random signature box so that when I pass this off for sign off, that it went to Saskatoon, this is where they would sign their name, for example. They're just simple Excel. And then the last one here, I don't know if I've got a fancy template set up. If I actually selected one piece of content and I just want to give this information to somebody for this particular volume, and that's the last one here, generate content. It looks like I don't have any templates here, so this is just going to be a raw dump into a spreadsheet, and this is kind of what we see. And this is just all the information. Again, we want the box information because where that volume is, the box that it's in, that information is important to the volume content as well. Just to highlight here, we have been looking at boxes, but we could have been looking at things like cabinets. For example, here we'll open up a sample cabinet here. I've got drawer 1, 2, 3 with a couple of files in it. When it pertains to physical information, shelves, maybe everything was put on shelves, and we've got, these are actually core samples and not volumes. And here we can see where we're starting to see a little bit different metadata. And again, when I generated this report, I would see the metadata associated with the shelf and the core content, not just the predefined one as the volume that we saw earlier.
So while we're in the project, Troy, and we're into the reporting piece of things, what if we have to generate a label? What if we have to print a label?
Yeah, so let's hop over to a box here. So we just ingested this 06 box here. So we're going to go into here, and you can actually do this pretty granular. We can actually select a subset of volumes that we want to do the labels for. Maybe these ones were damaged and we're recreating the folders. All the other folders in the box were fine. And out of the box, what we do is we generate a form that's formatted to one of the Avery standards. So out of the box, we get something that kind of looks like this. Let me hit the print button. And this will just bring up pre-formatted into, so if I hit print on this, this will actually go out to one of the Avery label standards. And this is just the information for each of the volumes that I had selected, not all the volumes in the boxes. You get to pick which ones you'd like to generate labels for.
So I could put a barcode on there though if I wanted to, Troy.
Yeah, so we didn't have it, when we scanned in this box from our spreadsheet, we didn't have any barcodes there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to assign one of these volumes a barcode manually, just to kind of show where the information lives. We can auto-generate some of these barcode numbers based on when we bring them in, but I left it blank for now so we can kind of see where this lives. So I'm going to say 7, 8, 9, 10, right, 0. So this is actually going to be my barcode number. So I'm going to save this. And if I actually generate the label again for a couple here, just to demonstrate, we're going to generate the labels for these 3. Because that first one actually had a barcode information with it, we generated a QR code to put on the label for the volume just before we stick it on. We have a number of ways to scan these. We can do it through the capture that we demonstrated earlier with the box label. Instead of OCR, and we can scan a barcode. We also have a mobile app that we'll probably look at in a separate webinar at a different time, where you can actually scan barcodes and QR codes or take pictures of box labels from a mobile app as well.
That's really good, Troy. So none of us really have ever had unlimited budgets for any projects that we wanted to do. I think you'll all agree with me on that. Whisper was actually designed to be that tool that gives us the scope to do many of the projects that we've always wanted to do at a really manageable price point, so that we can actually get some important things done without waiting for the next budget year. So Whisper offers a really inexpensive way to get things done. You get to do the jobs you've always wanted to do and could never afford without the budget you never had. So I want to, at this point, I'm just going to look at our chat screen, and I don't see any questions on here. If anybody wants to ask any questions, we could certainly do that. Because this project is about physical information, we're not really looking at the electronic portion of the Whisper tool. But the next webinar will be on shared drive cleanup and how Whisper would aid in that type of a project. And again, talking about that kind of project. And I know, because I talk to people all over the country, that everybody's still got that kind of problem in their organizations. So I want to, I don't see any questions today, and because we want to recognize everybody's time, thanks so much for being on the webinar today. I hope you've seen what Whisper could do for you in a physical inventory project. And of course, reach out to us if you want to see things a little closer, or look at things in a little more detailed way, if you have a project that you want to do. And suffice to say that Whisper is probably one of the fastest and most comprehensive inventory tools that ever existed at this point. If any of you have to deal with large paper holdings, or the alien paper information that came along with a large merger or acquisition, you can readily see how Whisper would have benefited in all of those projects.
Yeah, just a quick note on future webinars, there'll be emails going out for those. We had the link set up for this one, but following today's webinar, we'll send out an email for the next one, as well as the schedule and links for the subsequent ones after that.
Thanks everybody again for being on the webinar today, and the next one will be on shared drive cleanup using the same Whisper tool that you saw today, only we'll flip it on its ear into the electronic side for the shared drive cleanup piece. I want everybody to have a great rest of your week and a good weekend.
We'll send out a link to the recording of this webinar following as well. Carolyn.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, everybody.
And thanks, everybody.
We'll be in contact for some of the questions that came up right here at the end, but we can end here and we can follow up with some of those questions that came up one-on-one.